Los Angeles and someplace in Texas. This is Green Tag, the Park in Theory. I am Philip, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host Scott Swenson of Scott Swenson Creative Development. And Green Tag is all about us taking the top stories in theme parks from each week and asking questions and puzzling through them together. And Scott is... He's somewhere in... I don't know.
Somewhere
he's always,
in Texas, apparently.
It seems like it's always busy season now. I don't know, for Scott.
It used to be only fourth quarter, and boy, has that changed. But yes, I am I'm just outside of San Antonio. I'm in New Braunfels, Texas, and I'm doing some work here for my wonderful friends at Natural Bridge Cavern. So yes, I am in this adorable little Airbnb here in somewhere, as Philip so adequately, that was really a cut down. So astutely noted, I am somewhere in Texas.
Perfect. Okay. Today, we're going to start off trying to figure out if the earnings from Six Flags actually matter. Because I have been really, it's like we had a pre-show discussion and I'm like, does this matter? I don't know. And Scott was like, let's just start recording. So this...
Yeah, because again, we were having before we started recording the show, we were having this intense, in-depth conversation. And I said, wait a minute, this is good content. Let's share this with our listeners. Yeah. So here we go. This could fly or it could flop, but we're going to still have the same conversation.
Here we go. So Cedar Fair released their earnings, and the TLDR version of this is, I'm not sure if it even matters, because it's kind of like, it's a little bit like a well, we'll talk about it. So first of all, their attendance dipped slightly, only slightly, from 26.7 in 2023 million people to 26.9 million in 2022. So that's a slight dip. Their revenue also dipped a little bit. In-park per capita spending was down 1%. It was partially offset by a 5% increase in out-of-park revenues. Okay. Here's the interesting part, though. So basically, metrics are down from the previous years, but only by like a tiny bit. The interesting part was that they had a record 5.8 million guests in the final 4 months of 2023, which is a 9% increase over the same period in 2022. However, the spend during that time decreased. They also reported a loss in that same quarter of 10 million, driven by costs associated with the merger with Six Flags. Okay, so I was trying to puzzle out with Scott. I was like, okay, so TLDR, their numbers are slightly down, but we've talked about why all the numbers kind of should be down, because there was revenge travel that was still happening in the quarter they're referencing, and now it's like adjusting. We've talked about adjustment forever. And then basically they're making tickets cheaper to get people into the parks during the holiday season. So yeah, their attendance is much higher, and the per spend, because that's just how it works. More people come into the park, so on average they spend less. Like, sure, right? I think.
Well, there was an old way of approaching theme park attendance and theme park revenue. There was always a sort of arm wrestle back and forth of, is it more important to have clicks of the turnstile, or is it more important to actually make more money on the ticket sales? And this has been an ongoing fight back and forth.
What we were trying to figure out when we're trying to figure out if this was important or not is basically and this is why I needed Scott's help on, because the way I understand it as like a much newer to the theme park world than Scott.
You just call me old. You just
the veteran. He's the veteran. Okay, the veteran.
He's right.
Trainer.
You just called me.
Not that type of veteran. So I was wondering, okay, so here's what I saw. I see that there's three kind of tiers to this. Tier one is just like you learn in restaurant school, because I was in that for a stint, and it is butts and seats, basically, is what our chef used to say, which basically is we need to get people into the park. Mm-hmm. And the more people that are in the park, the more chance we have that they will buy things we have higher margin on. Okay, so that, to me, that was like the original, as a few years, maybe like from the last decade or whatever, that was like the tier one. Tier two was like, they discovered this thing called a second gate, and that was Halloween. And Universal has made it its own separate quarter, and now everyone else, literally everyone, like remember last season when we talked about, coming near you, lights on everything, like insert X here. So everyone has decided that Q4 they could make 2 gates, they could double their inventory, right? Essentially, because the problem with number one is that just like in restaurants, it expires. You can't get the day back. So if you don't sell out every single day, you've lost your inventory and you can't get it back. But now tier 2, we discovered, hey, actually, we could just invent new inventory. They could do the single, the second gate, invent new inventory. And people are like, aren't the guests going to get upset that we're having their day that used to be 12 hours and now it's only like 6? And they're like, apparently not. So, and this is a uniquely American thing. We talked about that too. And then tier 3, I think, is where we're getting to, right like at the crest of the peak, which I think it's really just Disney that has been journeying into the new frontier, which I'd call tier 3, which is like, if our parks sell out and our gates sell out, they're like, they're after dark events, Oogie Boogie Bash, all that selling out. What can we possibly do? Oh, we could add entirely new properties that are luxury experiences that we could sell outside of the park. And that would include the Star Cruiser, some of those items that they're doing. That is how I understand it. Correct, right? So that's Star how Cruiser, I understood it.
Not so much. Well, and I think we can, honestly, I think we can say that Universal is starting to sort of dip their toe into that as well with the new Vegas experience, things that are outside the confines of their park, or different approaches to park, like the family park, those kinds of things. So yes, I think you're absolutely right in that the back in the day, it was, if we build it, they will come. And what we need to do is get as many clicks on the turnstile as we possibly can. But even back then, like I said, there was still an arm wrestling going on. There was still a fight going on between, do we look at real money or do we look at attendance? And what usually ended up happening is by the end of the year, whichever was higher, that was the matrix that we chose to use when we were reporting it to anybody else, like the stockholders or the media or whatever. So yes, our attendance is up. What we wouldn't say is, but our revenue is down because we cut our ticket price in half. So to that end, it apparently is still an ongoing battle back and forth. But in what we've just talked about and what we've reported here,
it seems like it's the same thing, right?
Cedar Fair,
like nothing has changed.
It is
They're
exactly
just doing
the same thing. It is
like this is business as usual, is how I read this.
Right, and I think exactly, and the way I look at it is, we had a slight downtick at Cedar Fair. We had a slight downtick, and what is the light at the end of the tunnel is we had a 9% increase of clicks of the turnstile, but we did it at a lower per capita. So we did it at a lower per cap. And that's not necessarily the wrong thing to do if you are on a recovery, if you have a long-term recovery plan. The more people you can get in, the more people they can have fun. And then to really make it sort of a meh, this is more of a wash, is their losses, many of their losses are attributed to the merger, which is going to create, in theory, a great deal of growth.
Yeah, right.
In the
theory.
future.
Yeah.
So
yeah, but yeah.
Well, I see that because we really don't know. We really don't know. I actually, my gut tells me that the Cedar Fair Six Flags merger is a good thing. I think it is going to be. I think both companies, having some sort of familiarity with both companies, I think both companies have things the other one doesn't have. So if they're able to pull the strengths from both sides, I think they will make a better merged company. But it's not going to happen instantly. Yeah. And like I mentioned to Philip before we even started recording, is I said, at this point, from what I can see, Cedar Fair is still acting like Cedar Fair, and Six Flags is still acting like Six Flags, and they're in the process of coming together. But when you take two big behemoth companies like this, it is a slow process. There is so much legalese that they have to go through before they can start acting like a nice, smoothly running machine, So they're still figuring that out. And I think we can only give them the time to do that. But now that we've gone through it, and after we've had our both our pre-recording discussions and our on-air discussions, I kind of look at this and go, yeah, they had a downtick.
Right. Yeah. So I guess, I think that So basically, like, it is news, but I think for our audience, it's not really important because it's just business as usual. I think the only important thing might be to understand that they are still struggling with that tier one. Like they haven't gotten to the point where they can. Yes, they're not
They're
selling
not
out.
selling out.
Correct.
They're not selling out, and they're not selling out. But they've learned that by reducing their gate, by reducing their ticket price, that they can drive attendance.
Yeah.
So it depends on what they do from this point. This is interesting information to evaluate, for them to evaluate and to have. Do they need to reduce their spend so that this new lower ticket price? Do they need to increase opportunities for in-park upsell?
Yeah.
There's a lot of factors that come into play here. But it is interesting information. I won't say it's unimportant for our listeners. I think it is important for us to recognize that all too often, with large corporations, the moment there is something that is not a growth,
everyone freaks
out.
They
look at it as a catastrophe.
Everyone
freaks out. It's a downtick. That's not where you want to be, and you can't sustain that. But the information that they have is good.
I would also
to help them recover.
It, and this leads into our, I guess the related story. But I don't know. I think it's also clear that they haven't figured out really a way to make more second gates, and I think that was my. If you look at tier 2, which is second gates, Disney, this is something Disney is becoming very good at, which we've reported on previously, but they're doing, now they have Star Wars nights, and it's like they have second gates year round now, and they are selling out. And so they're really finding a way to make that tier 2 work.
Well, they're selling out in California. Let's be clear here. California is, you have a very different perspective of what Disney is doing than I do. Disney is, even though they have more than one park, but in California, Disney is a park. It's a park that has two halves, in my opinion. In Florida, it is a resort. So it's a multi-hotel resort with significantly more parks, significantly more land, and it is not filling up. So I think that when we talk about Disney, we kind of have to make that distinction. You're right. Disney California, they can't take the capacity. But let's be honest, that park was never built for the capacity that it was supposed to, that it could potentially have now. It's a tiny park. It's got no queue. It's got no, doesn't have enough parking. There's a lot of things. So the whole idea of the reservation concept there, that's how they're managing. They're actually at the opposite. They're having the opposite challenge of tier 1. They have too many potential people in the park, and to try to diversify that, that's why I think is driving the second gate, is to try to say, okay, well, you can't get in during the day, but here's some more ticket media that we'll put out at night, which is much sexier to a Disney fan to say, come to this exclusive event, than we're going to open the park, we're going to have a day ticket and a night ticket for the same product.
I think that was exactly what I said. I think that's kind of how I started this discussion, which is that. Well,
but I just wanted to clarify that is only true in California.
Yeah,
that is not true at Disney in Florida.
So I'd agree with that. I think that clearly they're scaling back the reservation system in Florida. So and we know that it's not been at capacity, and they don't have. I guess this is where my knowledge is lacking, but I don't believe that they have as many second gate options year round as Disneyland does in Florida. Like at this point, we have a second gate option like almost every month here in California, and I don't think that's true.
But to your point, Philip, part of the reason they don't is because they haven't.
Correct. I'm saying I'm painting this as a progression. I'm painting this as like an ideal progression for business models in theme park area, and I think that this might have been maybe what Bob was mentioning when we talked about it last week. It's like, is this the thing he's talking about when he's like, we're putting all this money into increasing capacity? Like, does he mean part of it trying to max out the capacity in Florida?
Well, possibly. And it could be also that the capacity or the expanding capacity is the second.
Yeah. So related to all this, of course, talking about this concept of like a second gate and whatnot. So Six Flags has made some two announcements. I was trying to tie them to the first one, but I think now that we've talked about it, I don't think it doesn't really fit because you almost see like the thing, like Six Flags, it's like Cedar Fair. Sorry, Cedar Fair is still struggling to get enough people in the parks. But Six Flags, I would argue they're also struggling to do that, but they're also trying to do second things.
Well, to get people into the parks at a full ticket price. Because as we've reported, they can get people in the parks. They had a 9% increase at a lower ticket rate.
So Six Flags, they had two things that came out that were interesting. First is that they're doing a glamping resort that's opening June 14th. And this is I believe that's at actually 2 locations, but the one that I have here in the show notes is from the Great Adventure in Savannah. And basically it's an overnight glamping property. It's going to have 20 suites. Then it can cater to couples with up to 2 guests, or, for smaller families. So they come with a daily breakfast, giraffe free feeding, and park admission to Six Flags Great Adventure, Six Flags Hurricane Harbor Park, and the Wild Safari Adventure for every person on the reservation. If they already have park admission, they'll receive frontline access to the park instead, which I would say is not really a great deal. And Attractions Magazine is the one that brought the story, and they did a mock checkout, and they said that the prices for 2 nights on opening weekend this June is $1,400 in a couple suite and $2,200 in a family suite. So it's basically, it definitely is a whole property that's designed to be a premium property. So it definitely would be them trying, I think that tier 2 type of thing on the Six Flags side. It's also interesting to note that that Six Flags Magic Mountain here in California has announced they are bringing back Scream Break. It's coming back March 22nd through April 13th. And this is the second year that they're going to have done this. And the main differences between last year and this year is that they've gone from 14 nights last year to 8 nights this year. And last year they offered a multi-night ticket. This year there's no multi-night ticket. It is $40 per person plus parking, unless you are a pass holder. If you're a pass holder, you can get entry for free, but it is limited. Like, it's first come, first serve, and it's limited. So you can reserve online. If the online reservations sell out, you can show up at the park in person before the event and try and get a ticket from guest services if you have an annual pass. But basically once they're gone, and then you would have to buy a ticket to come to the night event of Scream Break. And this year, Scream Break, the offerings are relatively the same. There's 2 haunted houses, 3 scare zones, 2 DJ areas, and they have themed food and beverage and whatnot. And last year, we talked about how I actually think they did an excellent job making it a new event. Like when you went last year, It was monsters, it was ghouls gone wild. It was actually like a Scream Break themed. It wasn't just Halloween. It was actually like monsters on spring break, and it was excellent. It was actually really well done. I talked about it last year about how I think it's because they had access to talents they don't normally have. This year, they've announced that they're going to just bring back all the themes and the same stuff. They're going to change out one of the haunted houses to be Saw instead. Because Saw was a really popular one. And again, IPs, all that. So they must have had the license to last through Scream Break, which shows some future planning. But yeah, I mean, essentially it's seems to me like very similar where they did the test the first year and it went mediums. They're going to do it again. It was enough to do it again, but clearly they're reducing the nights to just being on the Friday, Saturday, not Sunday. And they are trying to make the per spend guest higher by reducing the ticket options and probably limiting the amount of free tickets that can come in. But ultimately they're still trying to get more people to come in for a second gate and trying to spend more money on the food and beverage and all that stuff.
Well, it sounds to me exactly what you were talking about in your tier 1 discussion. Yep. They're trying to max out the capacity for fewer nights. I mean, that just is quite honestly good business. Now, whether it creates a good product, that's a whole nother story. How can they manage the larger crowds on the fewer nights, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That goes back to our old, the old song and dance that we always do. What about our execution? What's the execution going to be? So it seems like they're doing that. But I mean, I think it sounds like a good idea. If it was a good event last year, let's hope that it's a good event this year. I think they're finding a way that they can max out that that capacity over 8 nights versus 14 nights, which seems like a good business move. I want to step back just a little bit to the glamping resort experience. So high end.
It has Star Cruiser vibes, in my opinion, for sure.
It has. I mean, being from Florida, it has Animal Kingdom Lodge vibes to me. It's also something that at one point in time, Six Flags in Tampa, Busch Gardens in Tampa, talked about experimenting with as well. So here are the things. This goes back to my, not only is it's not really a new idea, it's something that has been done before, and it's been done by Disney, which they, have a bit better track record with the higher end experiences, not necessarily including Galactic Star Cruiser, but so I'm curious. I hope that Six Flags is almost outsourcing this, because Six Flags, forgive me, Six Flags friends, but Six Flags is not the first theme park company I think of when I think of high-end exclusive experiences. Now, maybe this is a turning point for them. Maybe this is something that is coming about because of the Cedar Fair merger. Maybe they're starting to, as a combined company, explore these options for more high-end exclusive experiences. I don't know. I will say it sounds really cool, and the concept art that I've seen looks really cool. And no, I don't have any sort of behind-the-scenes access. It's what's been published, but I'm just, again, it comes back to that execution. And is this? This seems, when I saw this announcement, the first thing I thought was, this seems out of character for Six Flags. This seems out of character for Six Flags. Now, I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm not saying they won't do it well. I'm saying it just seems out of character based on their previous track record and the way they've kind of positioned themselves in the industry. They've always positioned themselves as very much an amusement park. Yes, they have IPs. Yes, they have themed areas. But for the most part, it's an amusement park with a couple of themed areas and some IPs, which, as a coaster nerd like myself, I love Six Flags exactly for that. So I'm curious. This, like I said, seems out of a little bit off brand, but is this the sign of the new Six Flags, the new Six Flags Cedar Fair merger? I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know.
Cool.
I agree with you on all those. I also would say that I think the price point is pretty high for the area that they are in. Like
Savannah?
I mean, just looking at that mock checkout, like $1,400 in a couple suite and $2,200 in a family suite. I don't know, like $2,200 for 2 nights, and this is in Savannah. Like, I don't.
Savannah has some pretty high-end stuff, but it better, like I said, I want my car washed when I come out. I mean, it better have every bell and every whistle. Now, granted, if there are only 20 suites, it is possible that they are able to give them the kind of service that you deserve for that level, for that price level.
I don't know.
And a giraffe feeding, what does that mean? Are you doing it from your balcony, or are you schlepping out to the chain link fence that holds the giraffe? Two very different experiences. So
I just think this would be maybe not. I mean, I just think this would even be expensive in California, right? And
well, it breaks down to what, $700
for a family would be $1,100 a night. For a couple, $700.
Right, but for a couple, yeah, $700 per night. So that's high.
Especially when you're not you could go to like the Ritz-Carlton, right, for like a similar price, right? And then you just buy a ticket to go into the park, like, and take an Uber there. Like, it's not like, I don't know. Well, whatever. We'll see. As you said, execution.
But it does include the park admissions.
Yeah, but
so we have to kind of back that out. It's not that high. I get it. No, I like I said, it comes down to execution, like we always say. I don't know whether it's something that I would do. But if someone came back to me and said, "Oh my gosh, you would never believe this was on a Six Flags property because they took care of us like gold,"
all right,
then I might consider it.
okay.
No, I don't know. We'll have to see. I'll tell you something I would consider, though.
Yes. I think this section should be called the gamification of improvisation. And this is the story is that the Dungeons and Dragons, an off-Broadway show, is coming to New York City. The off-Broadway show Dungeons and Dragons, the 20-Sided Tavern, is an interactive theatrical production that allows the audience to participate in a live, officially licensed Dungeons and Dragons fantasy quest. The plot is driven by audience decisions, and the show features a cast of 5 actors playing over 30 unique characters in a popular Forgotten Realms setting. Each performance is unique, with the audience voting on key stories decisions through the use of an app. So the audience members can decide which characters appear and help them overcome puzzles, riddles, and combat experiences. Additionally, some audience members will be chosen to join the cast on stage and participate in various activities, including trivia, characters, and fantasy beer pong. So for those that haven't played Dungeons and Dragons before, I'm sure you're familiar with the whole concept of the D20 system and all that, but essentially Dungeons and Dragons is like you make your character and then you go through, generally it's a tabletop game. And that means that everything is done in the imagination and on paper. And generally what you're doing is you make a character, and then, you act or you role play through situations. And whenever you want to do something or, use a skill or whatever, like you want to try and convince someone to do something. So you have to roll a persuasion skill or whatever. You're rolling dice to determine how well you will succeed at the item, or whether you'll succeed or fail, right? And you get certain boosts to what you do. So basically what this is doing is taking that, the portion of the rolling thing, and allowing the audience to participate in that through the app. And then that influences the outcome in real time of what's happening on stage.
Yeah, and the thing that I think is interesting, and that's not really mentioned in this story, so I'm curious to see how it plays out, is actually having the game master, who is the one who helps facilitate the forward movement of the show. There are so many things about this particular story that I really, really like. First off, it ties into what we've been talking about for several weeks now, and that is how powerful the gamers market is right now. More powerful, more vibrant, touching more people, opening more wallets than movies, than what's happening in Hollywood. And again, it wasn't until I went to Gen Con that I truly saw the power of gamers and the power of the gaming culture. So that, I think, is really exciting. Secondly, this is truly immersive. You've heard me use my phrase, I get tired of people saying things are immersive when they're just 360 degrees or something you walk through. Something is immersive when the participants or the audience members actually can impact the forward momentum of the presentation, can actually change what's happening. This is clearly what's happening here. So I think that's really fun. The third thing that I'm excited about is this is a wonderful, from how it's described here, it's a wonderful melding of technology from the game app and live performance from bringing people up on stage to play fantasy beer pong. This is just like, yep, super simple, love it, easy to do, and easy to make work. And the fourth reason is completely selfish. So 2 years ago at Tampa Fringe, or 3 years ago at Tampa Fringe, I got a chance to sit in as a guest in a Fringe show that was very, very similar to this in concept. It was not licensed by Dungeons and Dragons. It was a completely different scenario, completely scripted for the show. But it did exactly the same thing. There were only 4 of us. There was a game master and 4 actors, and we were all improv actors, and we utilized the exact same concepts, the rolling of dice, and then the audience, because we didn't have an app with the Fringe show, the audience actually had a die that they could roll at certain key moments and change, and we had to all adapt to the changes that were being made within the realm, within the world. With the reintroduction of Dungeons and Dragons through Stranger Things, I think this really taps into a multi-generational audience, and I'm very, very excited about this. And I'm excited that it's getting attention. I'm excited that it's coming to New York, and I'm hoping, again, with good execution, that
I
it will
agree
be
with
an
all that.
incredible success.
Very quickly, I wanted to just add that, you mentioned about the real-time interactive pulling you through the story. I also want to highlight that a big part of D&D is consequences, and the dice help enforce consequences, right? And so I think that I think that's a big piece of it. That's clearly going to be in there because the characters will face consequences depending on how well you roll or don't roll. And also, it's when you said the technology pairing, I think it's important to point out, we've talked about this before, but this is technology helping the story. It's not the other way around. And I think that's
Right.
That's critical because,
Right.
It's like you could not do this without technology. That's when technology should be used. Can you tell the story in a better way, a more seamless way through technology? Or is it putting a layer that distracts you? And this is not that. This is like we are using it to make sure that the improv actors can do something without skipping a beat, and that everybody can participate quickly, and just make it frictionless. And I think that's those are my 2 points. Yeah.
Yep. And I think those are great points, Philip. Thank you for sharing. And as far as frictionless, we are going to slide right on out of this show because we are out of time. So, yeah, I'll get better at my transition. I keep saying that. I've said that for the last 3 weeks, that I'll get better with my transitions. I haven't. The show's over, so I'll keep working on them. On behalf of Philip Hernandez with Gantom Lighting and the Haunted Attraction Network, and myself, Scott Swenson, with Scott Swenson Creative Development, this, once again, is Green Tag, Theme Park in 30-ish. And we promise that we will see you again next week.